Hello, everyone. My name is Tangela Johnson, and I am privileged to be here with Lauren Steedley and Darian Scott. Both of these gentlemen worked really hard on the Chattanooga Chamber's Procurement Pilot, and so they're going to talk to you today about all of their hard work. I'm a consultant, and I help facilitate some of that work that they did, and we worked together as like the Three Musketeers, I'll say. We had a good time and did some great work. This started in late 2021, and basically the focus was on greater economic inclusion for historically marginalized groups. So they're going to talk to you a little bit about their experiences, lessons learned, and all the great things that they're going to do in the future. So, Lauren, Darian, first question. Tell me a little bit about what a procurement pilot is. Give us a sort of a brief overview.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So just real quickly, we started this process going back to 2021. Much of it was as a byproduct of a couple of facilitated conversations with a part of our advisory. And what came out of that conversation was a really importance around procurement. And why procurement? Because we recognize that like 1.7% of black businesses in Chattanooga actually employ people. And we also recognize the implications of that in that African Americans were, in terms of the poverty rate, was 3 times that of whites. They're at 24.1%, whites are 8%. But moreover, and equally as important, it's all about inclusive economy, which is consistent with regards to the Chamber's mission about mobility and prosperity.
So that sounds like super important work.
It has been. It has been.
Yeah. So thinking about the Chamber, why is this so important to the Chamber? Its membership and ultimately the community. Why does it matter? Why should your audience even be concerned or care about this?
Yeah, as I touched on before, it's in terms of mobility and prosperity, that was part of the Chamber's Chattanooga Climbs strategic plan. So it's lockstep with that. So we understand, and in terms of greater economic participation, that the region prospers, and that means it's better. And it also gravitates and creates this economic destination of opportunity.
So I love that. And you know, the world has shifted a lot, right? Things are changing. Things are changing with our economy. We're post-pandemic, all of those things. When you think about the future of business when it comes to marginalized groups, what does that look like to you? You know, if you're holding up a crystal ball, what would you love to see, or what do you think the future holds?
I think we're at a very critical time in terms of inclusivity. I think those local economies who understand and value it and see it as a value add and as a tool will be the ones that will win. And at the same time, we talk about globalism. So not only is the United States becoming a majority of color by 2050, the same is happening all over the world. So it's advantageous for Chattanooga to get ahead of this in a way to maximize and grow and sustain the economy.
So that makes a lot of sense, Lauren, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. Darian, I want to hear from you as well. You've been an entrepreneur for a lot of years. You also have had the pleasure and privilege of working with the Chamber as well, so you see both sides of the equation. So tell us a little bit about, you know, the term social capital. So how important is it that entrepreneurs, especially those just starting out or who don't have the normal or traditional access to those relationships. Tell us a little bit about how important social capital was for this pilot.
Well, we really realized that a lot of our vendors had mentors or sponsors to help them along the way. Most of these people encouraged them and supported them. They saw their work ethic. They saw that they were really able to produce the item or the product that they were producing. They wanted to help them get to the next level. So that was very important. But also when it comes to social capital, it's important to know your target audience. Know who you're speaking to with your product or your service. So we realized some people had a problem knowing their target audience, but the majority of the vendors, they definitely had a sponsor or a mentor to help them get to the next level.
Okay. So social capital, very important to this process. But also, Darian, I know you're a numbers guy, right? We talked a lot about that. So Can you speak to the learning curve when it comes to financial literacy, business literacy, if you will? What type of skills and did you find that the entrepreneurs needed? And also, I know you have a literacy program here at the Chamber, so if you could just kind of speak to that.
Well, in business, it's important to know how you're handling your business financing, your business financials. And that's important on any level. So within that, the way you handle your business financials, that can help you grow your business. It's all about obtaining business credit, how you use business credit, and how you leverage the success of your business to get to the next level. That's just like one of the business thought processes, but so many other things come into play. But like Lauren said earlier, only 1.7% of businesses employ people. So along with that, you need things like HR, learning those aspects as well. So that's part of the business literacy series, which is another series, but it definitely fits into the procurement process as well.
Okay, okay. And then just kind of speaking to that a little bit, did you have some of the participants who weren't really ready end up in your financial literacy program?
Yes, actually what we do when they come into the fold of the chamber, we assess them to see which level of business they're on. And some of the ones that wasn't quite ready to deal with the procurement program, they did join the business literacy series.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Just really kind of talking to both of you, and Lauren, I'll start with you. What was the biggest surprise of the pilot, thinking back?
Yeah, man, there were several. I would probably go with, I think Darian touched on it earlier. It's the sponsorship by a number of our vendors who had sponsors. And significance of that is that you would never know. And they were sponsors for extended periods of time. Much of that was due to the sponsors seeing the work ethic and the quality of service and delivery by those particular vendors. So that was one of the, I would say, the bigger one. And I would say too, and Darian's clearly we all have, communication between and among the vendors and our corporate partners, and certain assumptions around that.
Now, when you say sponsors, let's just pause there for a little bit, because it really sounds like it goes back to what Darian was saying about social capital.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
those sponsors were actually business allies, if you will.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great, great. Darian, thinking back, what was the biggest surprise for you?
Some of the vendors we worked with, they were far along in business, but really didn't have all of the back office support we thought they would already have.
Okay.
So that was surprising for me. Not a problem, because we were able to support. But sometimes I would think, if a person moving along that far, we would automatically think they have certain things, but sometimes they don't.
And sometimes they don't, because they're too busy making the sausage, if you will.
Absolutely.
And they don't hold their head up. But then if they don't, they're not able to scale.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Lauren, back to you. What would you do differently if you could go back to 2021 when this all started? What would you do differently?
You know, I think being clearer and more decisive around partnerships.
Okay.
So when you're coming in and it's a new body of work, you really want to sort of cast a broader net in terms of identifying would-be tactical as well as strategic partners. And I think that there were a number of groups just based on some clear takeaways. One, we discovered that you have to have that senior C-suite executive as a decision maker within the organization. In some organizations we interacted with, we were not with that right person. So I thought that to be to save time would have been great for that. And I think too, part of this pilot was also identifying would-be resources for it, and just getting lockstep on those would-be corporate vendors, corporate partners who exhibit and showed and demonstrated inclusive procurement practices, just really gravitating more of our energy and our effort in a way to move the process perhaps a little bit more quicker than we initially sought to do.
Okay. So it almost sounds like, number one, you have to have leadership at the top.
Absolutely.
That belief in what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that sounds critically important. Darian, what about, what are your thoughts? What would you do differently?
Our goal is to solve some of the problems we did see in the first round with the pilot, and that would be educate or train some of the vendors a little more on the front end. That way they're prepared. Okay. That's what I would do different.
Okay, that makes sense. Lauren, just kind of getting back to your business partners, and they were an important part of the process,
Absolutely.
very important part of the process. We know they were open and all of those things, but can you give us a couple of specifics on what they contributed? And then Darian, of course, you jump in as well.
Yeah, we had one partner in particular, and we were able to identify a chief diversity officer in one of our healthcare organizations, and in that, literally, being able to walk us in and have us meet with the proper people for supplier diversity. And then from that process, we were able to talk to them about what our objectives were, what are some of our anticipated outcomes, and then have that particular partner bring those same critical folks to the chamber to meet and introduce themselves and their services and their requirements to our members. I think by far that was perhaps the biggest and best and clear-cut way to demonstrate how impactful this pilot can be in now transitioning to a program.
Wonderful. Darian, any thoughts?
Yes, just to add to that, we have a wonderful relationship with Pathway Lending, one of our partners from the very beginning. So our partner, Pathway Lending, it's great to watch them support some of the vendors as they go through the process, and they make things available. They make financials available for them as they need them as they go to the next level. So I think that's one of the main parts that I feel that has been very important about helping some of these vendors.
So, Darian, tell me a little bit about your thoughts around the business partners. How did they contribute to the overall success of the pilot?
Well, one of our partners in particular, they done some very good wraparound services for the vendors and really showed them financial ways to kind of grow, how to achieve some financials as they grow in the program.
Okay, so it sounds like you're talking a little bit about access to capital.
Yes, access to capital, very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were there other things that they talked to them about as well that was helpful?
Yes, back to the business literacy structure, teaching them how to use those dollars to increase their business credit. That way they can get more money to grow.
Okay, thank you. So, thinking through this, let's just say you had all the money in the world, all the time in the world, thinking about the future, thinking about what you've learned from doing this pilot, and you have a magic wand. Did I say you had a magic wand?
You didn't, but I can use one.
Here you go. There's one for you.
Thank
okay,
you.
take your magic wand, and moving forward, what would you do based on what you've learned from this pilot? What would you do next to help marginalized businesses expand and grow and build inclusive economic mobility for Chattanooga? What would you do?
My first thought would be specifically in the procurement department, in the procurement area. I would definitely give our vendors access to even more resources, okay, even more opportunity, even more financial resources as well. But one of the things I think that throughout the process we saw is that some of the vendors, even when it boils down to the actual bid process, getting them to understand that bid process is critical. Okay. And I think that's something I definitely lean in on, making sure vendors really understood the bid process and language and lingo.
Because it can be very complicated.
It can be.
Yes.
It can be.
Yes. And it can take a while, too. It's not overnight. Sometimes it can take months or even in some cases, years.
Years.
Okay. Absolutely. Lauren, same question. You got a magic wand? Yeah. I'm just going to give you one wish, though.
Yeah, I
okay, you just got one. All right.
I think for what I believe this sort of touches on and some of the things we've learned is I would go out and really look at some of the things that we learn on training and development for our corporate partners. Because I think there's a real opportunity, because I think they have expectations, and I don't know if they're consistent given where some of the vendors are. I touched on earlier about communication being critical. In the process, like we talked about, this being able to use online services where you submit your applications and then those things timing out. So there's a real learning curve around expectations, even being very self-aware about having low expectations of vendors because they're vendors from historically marginalized communities. So just really try to work with some of our corporate partners, and that's both local, regional, as well as national. And then perhaps the last part of this would be, how do we take some of the lessons learned and work with our fellow chambers around the countries as well?
Yeah. I think that's important. Is this something that can be duplicate it in other chambers? Are you guys willing to help other chambers maybe
Absolutely.
navigate this and figure this out?
Absolutely. I think there are some things that we learned, and what Darian sort of touched on earlier about the significance of this social capital. I just think that's something that has to be unearthed a little bit more and really sort of elevated. And another point that he made around access to capital sounds very elementary, but a lot of folks just don't get that connection. And I think the last thing that you said too, it takes time. And I think folks have to be prepared to be in it for the long term.
So here's a thought. We had quite a few receptions, right? Where we brought the vendors together along with the corporations and the other partners. Can you just speak to that a little bit? I personally thought it was a lot of fun. And then sometimes we forget the human element in connecting people when we're doing these things. So tell us a little bit about how important the receptions were.
I think they were very important, as you said, just forgetting about the human element, putting those people in the same room, breaking some bread, having general conversation. It's valuable before you even get to the business plan field.
Absolutely. And it provided time for folks who typically don't get the opportunity to be in the same room together, that opportunity. And I think from where we saw, like some of our corporate members, they were hearing things firsthand for the first time. And then we also brought in our philanthropic partner, and I separate and apart because there's certain things that she was able to pick up and it also allowed her to think about next steps. And in that context, because I know this to be true, one of our vendors was able to engage her, and based on that conversation, some other opportunities presented themselves. So I just think that the opportunity to just really cultivate an environment of opportunity and productivity and mobility is what it's all about.
Awesome, awesome. So this is truly, truly exciting. So glad to have been a part of it. I know you guys have big plans up and coming for 2024. So what are you working on concerning it's no longer a pilot, now it's a program. Yay! Right. So what are you working on for 2024?
I think for where I stand is that really trying to go deeper on the lessons learned that we had during the process. So being smarter in terms of identifying strategic partners, corporate partners, and using our criteria that we learned from our vetting process on what that should look like. And simultaneously, we know what to look for in our vendors. And one of the things that comes out of a business literacy series, if we see someone who has promise, but perhaps doesn't have the back office support, we are better aligned now to put them in contact with the right set of services. So I think those are some of the tasks we want to, and of course, we want to see some of these contracts land. We really want to generate this new revenue because we do recognize that these organizations, that if they have success, they're able to employ more people, and that's going to be broader and regional prosperity for everyone.
Darian, last word on 2024.
As I said, we're going into 2024 full steam, trying to get people contracts, trying to make sure they're educated and trained. And as opportunities come our way, we want to deliver them to our vendors.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I have to say these guys are amazing. They're heroes to the community. They've done a tremendous job. So congratulations to both of you on a job well done. I am just so excited about what the future holds for all of the vendors that they've worked with and the ones that they're going to work with in the future. So Lauren and Darian, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this great, wonderful procurement pilot. And we all look forward to awesome, amazing things in the future. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Have a good one.